Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to create a Ghost in the Shell Android laboratory. And what I started off with is I wanted a sketch of a laboratory for creating androids based on Ghost in the Shell. So this is the prompt I used in Midjourney right here. And as I started going through it, I liked this one a lot. I thought that was pretty good. And that was my favorite for a long time. But I kept on going and playing around, and I finally came up with this one here, which I think I'm going to use this one. I like this one just a little bit more. So I've saved that, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to use an add-on called Perspective Plotter by Mark Kingsnorth. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all the details of how you use Perspective Plotter, but just understand that it's based on a product called FSPI, which I've actually done some videos on before, but Perspective Plotter is a better program than FSPI for a number of reasons. One, it's easier to use, and number two is you can adjust things directly inside of Blender, which a lot of times is pretty helpful. In particular, this example it was really important because of the fact that there weren't any really good converging lines. So I had to actually create my perspective, then start moving objects around and then adjust perspective. So that was something that was really helpful. And also I might mention that Mark has several good video tutorials on his website as well as in Blender Market. So definitely, if you get a chance, check out Perspective Plotter. Okay, so I basically got this thing laid out just quickly. Not too fancy. If I go into this view, you'll see that's what I've got. Nothing crazy. What I want to do now is I'm going to basically take each one of these objects and start to detail a little bit, not a lot, just give me a little bit of stuff going on. I'm going to work with some other things later. But for now, by the way, to get this view, these are solids, but I've gone in here and I've turned on Backface culling. So I turn that off, I get this. So let's turn off our face orientation. So I turn off Backface culling. You can see that it hides everything. And then I've got some stuff like this object right here. And then just basically make sure I flip it so that it works right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and start to detail out some of this stuff. I've got this picture over here, and I think I'll move him over just a little bit so I can see him a little better. And I'll start just detailing some of this stuff out. So before we get started, let me talk a little bit about how I like to break up objects and what level they need to be broken up for this particular technique where we're using displacement maps. First off, when I start with any kind of object, try not to start with a cube. It's not better to start with something that's not quite square on any sides. Control A, we're just basically apply the rotation and scale to this. What I'll do is I'll tab into this and I'll hit Control R, which is loop cuts. And I'm going to scroll the mouse wheel and I want 2 or 4, which gives you 5 segments. An odd number is always good. You can also just do 1 and then move it up wherever you want to by clicking and dragging, which works just as well. So I'm going to just do something like this, and then I'll Control R, and I'm going to do the same thing like here, but this time I'll use 2, and I'll just right click so they're evenly spaced here. And then I'm going to grab some faces, and I'm going to pull a couple faces out, right? So I'll just take maybe these, say E, and move these out a little bit, maybe 1, and move these out a little bit. And then I can take an edge like this and Control B, and I only want to use 1. Actually, before I do that, I need to get all the loop cuts completed, because if I don't do that, then I'm not going to be able to add the parting lines that I'm going to want to do. The other thing I'll mention is that there's also a neat trick where you can basically push-pull these faces, and that would be going to Alt-E for extrude, and you want to extrude manifold, and that basically allows me to go inside. So for instance, if I took this and say E, and moved it back, it won't work, right? So I want to do Alt-E manifold, and I can move that back, and I can move this out. So I'm trying to get some variation. And the reason for this variation is because I really want light to hit this in different ways. I'm going to go Alt-E manifold, move this down a little bit so we get the idea. Okay, now I have that. Let's just go ahead and add a few parting lines. So I'm going to go Control R, and that's why, if you can see, we've got some parting lines here. So I'm going to just basically grab 1 and move it where I want it. So I'm going to move 1 here and Control R, and let's move 1 about right to there. Okay. And then if I hold the Alt key down, I can select this one, Alt Shift, and select that one. So I've got both of these selected. And then I'll just hit Control B to bevel it. I'm just going to basically make a parting line like this. And then I say Alt E and I say extrude faces along normals, and I can push them back in like this. So that's how that works. Once that's done, let's just go ahead and Control B. Let's do 3, Alt E, extrude manifold. I'm going to move this back a little bit. And 2, Control B is bevel. Actually, now this is a good example. I don't really want these two to be the same. So I might just come over here, grab this one and make this one more of a bevel right there. Control, maybe take both of these, Control B. Then when I bevel these, take them down. Maybe they'll be the same like that. So you get the idea. I'm just playing around with some of these. Let's just say this is the view we're going to work with. I could also just go 3, E, and move these out just a tad, something like that. And then Alt E, manifold, move that back in, something like that. So there, that'll give us, and this one is Alt E, manifold, move that back in too, right there. And then let's go 2, let's grab this one and that one, Control B, and we'll just bevel these out a little bit like that. Okay, so now that we have the basic shape that we like, what I'm going to do now is I want to add a little silhouette detail. And the way I do that is I'm going to go into the select mode on edges. And so I'm going to grab some edges here. I'm going to do vertical ones first. So I'll grab these two. I'll grab this. Actually, let's leave these off. Let's turn on that. And let's turn on this one. And I'm going to just do some vertical ones here. This one and that one. Okay. Once I have those, I'm going to right click and say subdivide. And I'll go into here and I'll say 2. And then I'll go into 1. Okay, so I can see what I've got. Since these are vertical, I'm going to grab these, just the ones that I just created these subdivisions for. I'll select these 2 and scale them up. Maybe grab these 2, scale them up. These are fine. And this one, I'll scale them up a little bit too. Okay, and then I'll go in 2 and I'll grab the center areas that we just did. Actually, and just grab the vertices because I can see them better in the vertex mode. So I'll just grab these, that one and this one. And we probably want them. And then I'll say Control B. And okay, so this is a good example. Is that notice when I try and bevel these that are connecting, it's not going to work. Okay, let's try this again. And this. Okay, and then Control B. And now what I'm doing is I'm creating a little bit of a silhouette angle right in here. As you can see, these kind of notch in and out. I can do the same over here, Control B. So I'm going to leave those alone. I'm going to merge these. So I'll say GG, slide it up to here. And notice under options up under here, I have auto merge turned off. So if I undo this and make sure auto merge is turned on and then say GG, when I move it up, it's going to automatically merge. GG, move it down, automatically merge. So there. Now that's done. So what I've done is I've actually created a unique looking design here. I might just go back in here, add these 2, maybe this one, and say, click and say, subdivide. Now, and we want to make it 2. Now, when I've done that, you'll see that I've also subdivided the faces, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go into 3, and I'll select this, and Control X, which is the same thing as X, dissolve faces, right? And then if I go to 1, I still have my vertices here. So I've still got these here. I can still scale them up like this. I can grab those 2 and I can grab these 2 and Control B, bevel these how I want. And it'll give me a little design detail. And it gives you an idea of just creating a quick little design that works. By the way, this right here, let's just show you how I can stitch this back up. So if I go into here and again with that merge, say GG and just drag this down to here, GG, drag that one down to here, GG, drag that over to here, GG, drag that up to there, and now we're good. Then I can get 3, Control X, and we've dissolved that. So that's really our little object right there. And when I'm all done, I can say A, X, limited dissolve, and I'll get rid of anything else I need. And that's really the object. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what you're going to see as I'm building out some detailed areas. I'm trying to create something with a silhouette. I'm trying to create something with a lot of different planes and angles that light can fall on. It's going to give me a little bit of difference. One more thing. A lot of times when you look at an object, you'll see that you're going to want some symmetry in it. And if you look at this particular object, there's really no symmetry anywhere. But symmetry around the y-axis for this object seems like it would make sense. So in that case, we go to the Edit, Auto Mirror tool, click on the y-axis and hit this Auto Mirror button right here. And that's going to give us a symmetry around that y-axis. And then I can go in here and I can just say apply all. And now when I tab into it, I can say AX limit dissolve. So you get the idea. So the idea being that now I have an object that has symmetry. So that gives a little bit more aesthetic appeal. Remember, this is just a concept. So anyway, back to our video. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just basically taking all those objects I set up in Perspective Plotter, and now I'm adding some different detail, kind of like what we showed earlier. This detail is rough detail. It's not exact. And the reason why is that we're going to add a lot more hyper detail using displacement maps a little bit later on. So as we kind of walk through this, you'll start to get a feeling that the actual model itself starts to get a little more detailed. I'll start adding things to shelves. I look at the images for reference. I don't necessarily match perfectly everything that's going on in the reference image, because what I'm trying to do is just make sure that I get that feeling that there's a lot of stuff here. And so I'm not trying to match everything, but I am trying to create enough detail so that light, when it hits these surfaces, it'll bounce off it in different ways. And, as I do this, I'm constantly going back and forth between this and the camera view to make sure I can see what's going on. So the goal here is to be quick. We're trying to create some interesting shapes, not too detailed. We're still focused on this quick concept development. The idea being that we want to create a very fast concept that we can then show to a client or a customer and have them review it. Okay, so I think we're done here. If you look at this is our final design, and notice that it's not all that detailed, right? So if I go in here, you'll look, it's not greatly detailed. It's just very simple stuff. We're going to detail it using Flex and displacement maps. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and throw the cables in here. The other thing I should mention is I've broken it out so that now I've got different objects that are labeled and I can turn on and off anything I want. Okay, so next what we want to do is I want to create a lot of these pipes. We have pipes and we have cables and we have floor cables and we have different kinds of grouped cables and all kinds of stuff. What I want to do is I want to create the pipes first. Let's go ahead and get the pipes done and then we'll talk about how we can start laying in some cables. So here we have our scene, and what I'll do is in my case, I'm going to go into KitOps and smooth this over a little bit. And I use Design Magic for this. In Design Magic, we have something called cables and pipes, wires, railing. It's got different kinds of geometry, node cables and different stuff. So I'm going to go grab this pipe cable one right here, and let's go ahead and move this around. And let's find, here's a ceiling right here. So I'm going to grab that ceiling and I'm going to take this one that we said is going to be a pipe, and I'm going to add the insert somewhere on this surface. I've selected the top surface. So I'm going to add it right there. And then I'm going to go to side view and I'm going to rotate it like 90 degrees, move it down a little bit, and I'm going to tap into it. So let's just take this and this, the surface, the top surface, and I'm just going to go into local mode with those so I can show you how this kind of works. So this pipe, I can tab into it, and let's just go into wireframe mode, and I can just say E and move things around, right? So I can basically go here. Actually, let's undo. Let's go to the top view. So let's look at the top view. So here's our top view of this. I'm going to turn off backface culling so we can see what's going on. So I can just say, move this out here and then say E, Y, or extrude it this way. And maybe take this and say Control-Shift-B, move that like this. And so if I look at this from our camera view right here, you see that the pipe is really small. So I'm going to basically grab everything, and then under item, I have this number right here, this mean radius, but I can also use Control-A to scale that up. So that's what I'm doing right here. There's the mean radius. And let's go to the top view again. So you see that got bigger. If I go into my modifiers, you'll see I have a bevel, and I can change the bevel amount here to actually see what I want as far as that pipe. And I probably want that to be a little bit rounder. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to move this one out farther. I'm going to take this one, say E, Y, move it out here. Now, this is a good example. Notice that this didn't work very well. And sometimes you have to move these around to get it to work. And that's because it's using the skin modifier. And I can just say Control X, just delete that if I want to. I could have just moved that other one. But so let's go ahead and get out of that mode. Let's go into here and let's look at what we have. Let's just select these two, this one, and let's move these down, GX. Let's just move these down so they're going along the right leg right here. Let's take this one and move it GX. I'm going to move it up a little bit, something like this. And again, the bevel, we're going to make a little larger so we have a little more of a bend there. And then this, I'm going to move it completely off into the sides. So now we're seeing what's going on there. And you can see that's not quite right, even though it looks right. So I'm going to hit A and just move everything down. And then I can grab this and these two here, GX, move them up, right? So now you see that they actually work better. And then A, Control A, just move it up like that. Something a little bigger. This GX, let's move it out of the camera view. And let's go back into here and see that we're getting pretty close. I think I would probably want to take this and maybe that and that one and move them over a little bit more, something like that. Getting close. A, maybe move it up just a tad. And let's get this one next to it. So all I have to do to get the one next to it, let's go to the top view and let's just take this. Oh, this is interesting. So this now we can see that it's still not quite in the right spot. I need to get this down below. Let's go back to this view. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's take this and let's say Shift D. Now we're still in the edit mode. So I'm going to Shift D. I'm going to move it next to it. And I'm going to take this one and hit L and move this up a little bit more like that. And let's go back to this mode. And we can see now this one here, hit L to select everything. I'm going to move it down just a little bit because it's riding a little bit lower. And so this is really the technique that I'm going to use for this. If I look in here in this rendered view, so you see that's the technique I'm going to use for this. Right now they're black, but we're going to fix the coloring here in just a second. But with this technique, we'll go ahead and fill out the rest of this design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate a vertex here and I'm going to pull it into this area right here like this. So it's coming out of this area. And then I say EX and move it out. Now, nothing's happening. And why is that? If I go into my skin, I need to mark a root. So if I just hit that mark root on one of these vertices, it's going to give me what I want. So let's grab these, Control A, let's move it down a little bit because we can look in this picture. See, that's not quite as big. So it's going to come out close to the wall like this. And then it's going to basically, it's going to move like this and then this out. Or maybe I'll just bend it a little bit more like this. So if we go back into here, we'll see this is what it looks like. And I say L. I think I'll make it just, again, a little smaller. Control A, make that just a little bit smaller. So there's that. If I'm looking at this thing, there's some other pipes. There's a pipe that comes down here and goes out there. So again, let's just grab one of these, Shift D. Let's move it, I think it's somewhere in here, something like this. It's going to come down from the ceiling. Move it down here, E, move it down, Z. Again, we'll go into here and we'll say mark root. So that gives us that. And I think if you look at this, it's thicker at the beginning. So I'm going to Control A, make it a little smaller, but like that. And then when it gets down to some level like here, I'm going to E, extrude it out and then up like this. Now these two are really small. So I can Control A and I can move those down. So notice I've gone from a thin to a thick right there. I can do that. I can add something else later on in that, but let's go ahead and look and see what that looks like. Yeah, you can see what's going on there. I might say L and just move everything to this direction right here, maybe up a little bit more, something like there. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks good. So you can just keep copying and pasting points as you go to create these pipes. But one of the things that you may see is that if you change the diameter of the pipes, it may affect the actual curves. And so what I've done is for the smaller pipes, I've just selected the vertices and separated those into a new object. And I use those to go ahead and create the smaller pipes. And then basically all I'm doing is just copying vertices and extruding them X, Y, and Z and moving them all around. And that's it. It's a pretty fast workflow. So I'm basically just moving these vertices around, creating pipes of different diameters, with the understanding that I'm also going to be adding cables, which are typically going to be smaller and certainly more curvy. So we'll get to that next. One thing you may notice is I try and keep all the pipes with the same diameter in the same object. So if I have different diameter pipes, I use different objects. Okay, so now that we've done the pipes, let's go ahead and add some of these cables around here. First, I think I'm going to just throw some pre-made inserts on the floor that just have tangled wires and stuff like that. And I'll hook them up with some dynamic cables and then add some geometry node cables as well. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so go in here. This is what we have currently. Let's go right here. By the way, just so we understand what's going on, I'm going to talk about how these renderings are done in the next section, where once we get all this set up, before we do the displacement mapping, we'll set up the render. I don't want to actually deal with millions of polygons while I'm trying to create the final lighting. So we'll figure that out here in just a second. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go into here, this mode. Remember, we have backface culling on. I'm going to select the floor first, and let's just go in and grab some of these, like this coiled cable, this one, and add the insert. If you look over here, we have a bunch of cables down here. So I'm going to add this insert here on the floor, and I'll scale it down a little bit, put it like maybe like this, put it in front. I want one over here too. So I've got another one. Let's try this one here. And let's add that insert over here. Let's just do this. We'll just put this something like so, maybe out here, and maybe rotate it as we're dragging around. Let's see, something like that, maybe right there. And I can take this and Shift D, Shift Z, just move it here. It will hit Kit Ops. We're going to say relocate insert. When I do that, the reason why I do that is so I can actually rotate it, right? So I could rotate it and scale it at the same time. So I'm going to stick that like right over in here too. Something relocate insert. Yeah, let's stick it maybe right in here, something like that. I'll stick it back in here, something like that. Okay, that's good. Let's see what else I have. I think I have some hanging ones that might be worth looking at. I've got these dual tangling ones. Let's grab the ceiling plane right here. As you can see, we got that. And I'm going to add the insert to that. So that goes up here somewhere. I'll just shrink it, rotate it. I've got some of these other devices. These all come with the Design Magic kit. This is the droopy cables, and this would be like, we could put that up here. There, tab into it, and you can see we just have 3 points. So I'm just going to drag this one up a little higher, maybe out a little bit farther. As you can see there, this one goes down. And if I go into the modifiers for this droopy cable, instead of 10, maybe we'll make it a little fewer, radius 0.02, make it a little thinner. The droop high is probably good. The droop low, though, I think I want to make that just a little, not quite as droopy. And let's make this 6. There we go. I want to squeeze these in together a little bit more, something like that. And then I can just move them up a little higher, maybe. So one of the nice things about these geometry node cables is you can just take the vertex and extrude it, and it'll just add more cables. So that's pretty cool. And so what I've done here is I've just basically added a bunch of these drooping cables all over, and then I'll go ahead and I'll switch to the non-drooping cables, and I'll basically treat those the same way. And we'll get to that here in just a second. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we grab these flat cables. And this, again, they're geometry node cables. I'll just click here and add the insert here. So stick them here on the floor. And then we can just find a place where we want them, tab into them, And I can move down. As you see, these things work pretty much the same. Let's select all these, lock them all down in the same spot, like floor. And I can just take this and say E and just bend them however I want to. So if I want to like move them here and then here and then into here, it'll work. And then let's go back into this view, see what we have. And there's the same thing here. We have a bulge value tool, which will expand them a little bit. There's an end pinch, which opens up the end, and you can keep them together. And then you can spread them out too by just here. We're just going to spread out in the Y direction a little bit and the X direction a little bit, just like that. So they travel along the floor. Okay, guys, here is our scene with the cables. And so the last thing I want to do is I'm going to add the Android. As you recall in this picture here, we've got this kind of Android sitting over here. And so I'm going to add that next. And I've got in one of my KPACKS, I think it's one that you can get on Patreon. It's got, it's like these stick figures. There's a metal one, there's a wooden one. And I'm going to grab the metal one. And what I'll do is I'm going to take this slumped character. I'll select this plane right here. And I'm going to add the insert directly onto here. And I think I'll scale them up just a little bit, like a little larger, maybe something like this. And we move them over. Okay. And really, that's all there is to this scene right here. It's pretty much done. Now, before I go any farther, let's tell you what we're going to do next. The next thing I want to do is first, I want to show you how I get this clay rendering and how I set up this. As I'm building this, I want to show you how I set up the camera views. We're going to do that next. And then I want to actually set up all the lighting, because the lighting is going to be important to set that up now and not later when we've got all these tremendous amounts of detail. I'd rather set the lighting up now. And so we'll do the lighting, and then we're going to basically create trim sheets, some Ghost of the Shell themed trim sheets to add the appropriate detail to this. And then once we get the trim sheets done, we'll add that, and then we'll consolidate the files. We'll just basically make it a lower resolution file so that it doesn't take up too much memory, and then render it out. So that's where we're at. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you online. Okay, bye.